Next item on our agenda, number 2, is the public hearing on the proposed tax rate. I guess Dr. Miller, does he need to say anything at this time? Okay. Not so. Okay. So the citizens, there he is. Dr. Miller, do we need to say anything related to the hearing on the proposed tax rate?
Only if there's someone there to speak.
Okay, now the next item would be, we haven't had anybody sign up. So no, sir, we do not have anybody to address the board about the tax rate. All right.
Okay.
The next item, number 3, is the citizens desiring to address the board regarding the rest of the agenda. We don't have any of those as well. Okay. Item number 4 would be a special presentation by Dr. Wallace, and Dr. Wallace is ill this evening, so I guess we are going to postpone that until next month. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Because I don't have any notes on what that is, so we'll have to do that next time. All right, the next item would be the chancellor's report, and again, we'll bypass that this month because he is not here. And then the informative reports. So the first committee report would be the executive committee, and we did have a meeting on September the 10th at 8 a.m., and we discussed the Board of Regents agenda for tonight's meeting. We discussed some dorm construction, update on a few of the projects that were related to the lights and the baseball and softball and the turf on the field, and a few other matters. But overall, we adjourned in 1 hour. All right, the next item on the agenda would be the Finance Committee report.
Discussed an increase in the capitalization threshold from $5,000 to $10,000. Dr. Miller informed the committee that increase was needed to meet federal guidelines and that they were going to implement that new policy October 1st of this year. It will come around to us through a TASB update. That just takes them a few months. We discussed the proposed tax rate for this evening and talked about different options available. And then we reviewed the August financials with the consideration that they were incomplete since it was the end of the fiscal year. We had some updates from Dr. Wallace, and then we adjourned.
Okay, thank you very much. And the next item would be building and IT, but I don't think you guys had a meeting, did you? Okay, very good. All right, the next item on our agenda under informative reports is the staff reports, and it's the finance report by Dr. Miller.
Okay, thank you, Chairman Messler. I appreciate y'all cooperating with me as I'm serving on a SAC site visit in North Carolina this evening, but I did want to be able to participate in the meeting tonight. And as Christy mentioned in her Finance Committee minutes, the financials, I apologize, are somewhat incomplete compared to what you normally get because of the end of the fiscal year. The main thing that you don't have would be the budget comparison. And I apologize for that, but it's just a timing issue, being so early in the month with all the year-end adjustments still to be made. I thought it was just best to leave that out rather than send something to you that was obviously incomplete and inaccurate. But the rest of the statements are valid and legitimate, and I don't really have that much to say. I think the one thing that I wanted to call your attention to on the first page of the financials, the statement of funds, we always list general and restricted funds toward the middle of the page. And the second item there is maintenance tax notes 2023. And actually, at the end of August, we spent every penny of the 2023 tax notes. And technically, we were down to a zero ending balance, but then we got interest that got tacked on at the end of the month. So you do see $1,600 sitting in that account. That's just the August interest that we received. It has since been moved out. That account is now sitting at zero. And we're going to convert that account over to the maintenance tax notes 2024. In fact, we're going to do that this week because the tax notes are going to be funded on Thursday of this week. So the tax notes that you approved previously will show up in that line item. And for the next year or two, you will be able to see on each monthly report the status of the maintenance tax note account, but it will be the 2024 tax notes starting next month. Does anyone have any questions about anything in the financials?
Okay, we don't have any questions on our end.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. All right, the next item on our agenda is the consent agenda items. We have item A through C. Are there any one of those three items that needs to be pulled off and discussed independently? If so, I will accept a motion.
I so move.
Okay, so there's a motion to approve the consent agenda items. Actually, the motion would be to pull any off, so we really don't need to pull any off, right, Lisa?
Correct.
Okay, all right. So since there is no, you want to retract your motion, right?
I
Yeah.
will retract my motion and make the motion that we accept the consent agenda items as presented.
Perfect. Okay, so that's a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Graham. Additional discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye and raise your right hand. Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you. All right, so now we're down to the discussion and action items. And the first one would be to consideration for the resolution to adopt the ad valorem tax rate for the 2024-2025 year. Dr. Miller.
Thank you, Chairman Metzler. As always, every year, one of the most important action items for the board is to set the tax rate for the upcoming year. And it's time for us to do that. And we've had a lot of discussion. Last month, the board voted to propose a tax rate of 0.0945. And that is what has been published to the community. And that's what we are bringing forward tonight for your action, is to propose a tax rate and to actually approve a tax rate of 0.0945 per $100 of tax value. The current, just to give you a little bit of background, again, we have had these discussions previously, but the current tax rate is 0.0886. And what we are proposing is a rate that is within the state guidelines that allows us to go up no more than 8% in any given year. The proposed rate that is going up is just under that 8% increase when you look at the M&O portion of the rate. So the M&O portion of the rate is going up just under that 8% number. There are some additional dollars going into the INS portion because of the tax notes that have been approved. So those two numbers together, the M&O and the INS, is what gives us our total tax rate. Does anybody have any questions about that tax rate, the composition of the rate, or anything about the proposed rate?
Any questions? Okay, doesn't appear that we have any questions, Dr. Miller.
Okay, just a couple of quick things that I want to call to your attention, and I believe these were in the notes that I prepared for you with your agenda. I wanted to make sure you knew that the Graham ISD has already approved a new tax rate for our maintenance tax district over in Graham ISD, and that new tax rate is 0.042367 per $100 of valuation, and that's going up just below that state limitation that we have of 8% on the maintenance tax rate over there. And then because we are proposing what is a tax increase, it does require a positive vote of at least 5 board members, regardless how many are present. But I see the all board members are present tonight anyway. but essentially it's a super majority that's required when it comes to raising the tax rate. So it does require 5 positive votes.
Okay, thank you very much for that reminder. All right, at this time, without any additional questions for Dr. Miller, then I would consider a motion.
I'll make that motion. The property tax rate be increased by the adoption of a tax rate of 0.0945 per $100 value, which is effectively a 7.9% increase in the tax rate.
Okay, so we have a motion. Do we have a second? Ms. Sullivan, additional discussion at this time?
Vote individually.
We're going to. Yeah, this will be a roll call vote, and we will need 5 yes votes to adopt the motion. Additional discussion? No? Okay, then I'll do the roll call vote. I'll start with Lisa Bellows.
I approve.
Mr. Grime?
Aye.
Mr. Ott?
Aye.
Ms. Morris?
Aye.
Carla Metzler, aye. Mr. Henderson?
Aye.
Erica Sullivan?
Aye.
The vote passes 7-0. Thank you. The motion's carried. All right, the next item on the agenda would be the consideration of approving a resolution by the Board of North Central Texas College for adopting a tax abatement guidelines. Mr. Baugh.
Okay, Madam Chairman and Board of Regents, what you have before you today is a recommended guideline and criteria for governing tax abatements agreements whenever they've been presented to us. As you recall, we did approve one a few years ago. This is strictly a renewal of what you renewed 2 years ago. It's good for 2 years. So what you have here is a request to renew the current guidelines for 2 more years. No changes.
Okay. All right. Very good. So we would need a motion to approve the adoption of or ratification of the resolution for the tax abatement guidelines.
I make that motion to approve.
Okay, we have a motion by Mr. Ott. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Grime. Additional discussion?
I had some discussion.
Okay.
Okay, I wasn't here the last time we adopted it, so I just have a couple questions. And just things that we might consider because we're limiting ourselves. In 7B, under authorized facility and all the industries that are eligible, just one of the items that we can think of is, do we want to limit ourselves to just those specific industries and facilities?
We need to find that. Can you help us find that?
Yeah, we're here.
Or, sorry, I have notes on my,
It's on page 5. It's on page 5.
so I did, and the pages I had it on
Oh, okay.
electronically.
Okay, here we go. I found it.
There's just a few things that might be considered limiting.
I am too.
I don't know what you're talking about.
It's page 5 on the guidelines.
Okay.
7B, eligibility.
Oh, mine's blank. Am I wrong?
I think I'm looking at the abatement and not the guidelines here.
Yeah, it might be because I don't.
Are we
have
out of
that.
order in the packet?
No. We're talking about the resolution.
It might be better to look at it electronically because I'm seeing the actual abatement, not the guidelines in the packet.
It's in there. It's in the guidelines.
I think our
Okay.
packet may be out of order.
Okay, so tell me what specific, what, can you tell us, did you look on your notes and what exact
Well,
industries that were?
okay, so there were a host of different facilities that were eligible, but calling all those out might limit us,
Oh, I see.
is all I was saying.
Okay, okay,
Just the intent, making everyone aware.
I
If
understand.
that's the intent, that is fine, but it is somewhat limiting.
Okay.
I thought it did address evaluations.
Okay. There's a table under 10A, according to my notes.
They printed the.
The
north part.
proportion of the tax rate is based on solely on jobs on that table.
Yes.
And so I was just thinking that we might want to consider valuation as well.
I think the evaluations are considered, but it's not in a table form.
Yes,
Yeah,
just to be, just to make sure that that's the intent.
okay, we can add that.
And there's a couple text things I can talk to you after, just since I read it in detail. And that
Okay.
was it, really. Just to make sure that that's the intent of what we want to do,
Gotcha.
that it might be limiting. And then when you think of 15 jobs, if you have a tech industry, they're not going to have 15 jobs. So that might be an industry that we might be excluding.
Okay,
Okay, so at this point, we have a motion and we do have a second. So we'll either need to revise the motion or go ahead and vote on the,
we can table it and make some changes and bring it back later, or we can approve it the way it is and just keep that in mind, because these are actually guidelines. They're not procedures. They're not set in stone.
right,
They're just guidelines for you as a board
right.
to consider.
But if we have a guideline, I mean, the purpose of having one is to kind of stick to that so that it's not, we're not all over the board and we're being fair to everybody. Yes.
Is there any business pending this resolution?
Well, we have an agenda item that would,
Changes.
but yeah, I don't know if any of those changes would, maybe it will,
The next
I don't know.
agenda item would just fall under the current guidelines that you have in.
which
place.
are the same
Which
as
are
the
the
ones
same.
that we were just fixing to approve. I
Exactly.
guess that's true. Yeah.
So is there any way that Erica can send out her recommendations and then maybe we can get those to review before the next board meeting?
We can update the guidelines is what we're saying. Is that what we're saying?
At least review the
Let's review
recommendations.
them to see if there's some additional discussion.
A motion is second.
We have a motion and a second.
Before we table it, is this going to negatively impact the consideration of the next item? They didn't
No.
conform to it anyway, so I,
No,
okay.
No. It won't. Because the guidelines that are in place are not changing. So if we vote on the next item,
all we're
It-
doing is renewing the current guidelines for 2 more years.
Right.
because the ones that you approved the last time were due in 2024 to be renewed for 2024 through 2026. And that's what we're doing today.
okay, so we either need to table this item and review the guidelines again, and then it will not have an effect on the next item on our agenda.
No
Okay,
effect whatsoever.
all right, so do we want, okay, who made the motion? Dylan?
I would like to rescind mine. Discuss the changes in the.
Okay, okay, all right. So we have that. Okay, so then at this point, we'll just go ahead and table that until the next time about approving the guidelines, reapproving the guidelines,
And
okay?
if Ms. Sullivan, if you could give me some input on that, then I'll go ahead and get the changes. Thank you.
Okay, very good. All right, now the next item on our agenda is the consideration for approving a resolution for the tax abatement for GVD North Park LLC. Mr. Ball.
This is a tax abatement application that was sent to me from the city of Gainesville.
Okay.
And it's a company called GVD North Park LLC. They're building apartment complexes out on North Grand Avenue, out towards the BFW out that way. And as you can see, it's a 5-year abatement that they're asking for, and with 50% for a period of 3 years, 25% for a period of 2 years. The abatement will be in effect for 5 years from after the date that that you approve it. They will maintain a $14 million taxable value to acquire to keep the incentive. And also will have 3 full-time jobs throughout the entire phase of the construction and after it is construction. So they'll have 3 full-time positions. And just want to remind you that this does not meet the guidelines
Right.
of the number of employees to be employed, because it says 15 on your guidelines. They're only going to employ 3.
Okay. All right. Do we have any questions specific to this? Okay. Anybody questions? Okay.
If they don't meet the guidelines, I'm not sure why this is a consideration.
I think because it's a guideline, we need to hear from the board to say yes or
Well,
no.
The
And
city asked us to present it.
right,
We would just take no action on it.
either take no action or have a motion to not approve or whatever that might look like.
I think we should take no action until we get our guidelines established.
Well, okay, the guidelines that are current are exactly like the ones we are going to approve
Yeah,
tonight.
with
So
no
we
change.
do have guidelines right now. And what Mr. Bob put in his synopsis is that it doesn't meet the guidelines because of the number of employees.
The current guidelines we have in
The
place.
current guidelines do not allow this to meet those guidelines. Doesn't mean that we can't either change the guidelines in the future or do something different than our guidelines suggest that we do.
Would any of your suggestions change?
Do you know?
Just
specific-
the number of jobs.
The number of jobs is the main thing.
Well, it was one of the comments, like if we had a tech industry, they wouldn't be eligible. It's not necessarily specific to this, but
Oh, it's
jobs,
not
the
specific.
number of jobs could affect this project, yes,
Yeah.
because that's why it's not conforming.
So my suggestion, and if I think it would be unfair to approve something tonight that we could make a different decision on later. I
Okay.
think that would be unfair for this proposal.
So is there any reason that we can't table this and bring it back next
As far as I know,
time?
there's no time limit.
That's what I was asking. Okay. All right. So it looks like that's exactly what we're going to do. We're going to
Okay.
table this until we have a chance to look at the guidelines, ensure that it meets what the board is willing to accept, and then we'll readdress this at our next meeting.
Sounds good. Thanks.
Very good. All right. Right. At this time, the next item on our agenda is executive session, and we do not require one of those this evening. So anybody have any additional announcements? Thank you all very much for attending, and at this time, we'll call the meeting adjourned. Thank you.